Steve Pfeiffer from Universal Recycling Technologies. Steve's worked there since 2006, and he was initially the general manager at the Seoul location in Janesville, where he had responsibility for all operations, sales, and logistics. He became the division manager of electronics, and he was overseeing facilities in New Hampshire, Wisconsin, Oregon, and Minnesota in 2010. Currently, he is the market area manager, overseeing consumer collections in states that have legislation requiring manufacturers to responsibly recycle materials under that state's particular e-waste laws. Prior to his employment with Universal Recycling Technologies, he worked in the architectural products industry in a wide variety of operation management roles. And with that, I will open the floor to Steve.
Thank you. As Ben had mentioned, my former life, I worked on the product that's to your right, those operable walls, for about 25 years. And my last year in that industry, I worked in Las Vegas, Nevada, and found that Janesville, Wisconsin was much more exciting than Las Vegas. So, let's talk about recycling of electronics. Why do we want to recycle electronics? George was talking about something earlier about 1968. In 1967, my dad bought a console television, and it was a piece of furniture. All the kids in our neighborhood came over every Tuesday and Thursday night at 6 o'clock to watch Batman. Anybody heard of Batman? Okay, well, this is the old Batman. So there are reasons we want to recycle electronics. First, to conserve natural resources. In the process of mining 1 ounce of gold, 422 tons of earth have to be disturbed. 439 pounds of fossil fuels, 48 pounds of chemicals, and 1.5 tons of water are used to manufacture one computer and monitor. And I'm not going to keep talking about figures with you. Recycling 1 ton of steel saves 642 kilowatts of energy, 1.8 barrels of oil, 10.9 BTUs of energy, and 4 cubic yards of landfill. A lot of steel out there. Most of it's exported these days. We want to reuse and recycle valuable materials. This is the energy part. And I use an aluminum can for an example because there's a lot of them, but they're also in electronics. Less than 5% of the energy is consumed to recycle 1 aluminum can versus mining fresh bauxite ore. The energy savings equates to powering an average television for 3 hours. Recycling plastics requires less than 10% of the energy required to produce new from raw materials. How many of you still use an old CRT television? Is that your primary? Okay. Do you have a flat screen too? No? Does your family have a flat screen? Okay. Does your family have an old CRT that's not working or that does work that they don't use? How many people in this room have that? Well, that console I was talking about is still in my parents' basement, and there's 2 other TVs sitting on top of it. And they won't get rid of them because they still work. Hazardous material management. While e-waste accounts for 4% of the municipal waste, it also accounts for 70% of the hazardous materials found in landfills, heavy metals. Dumping 315 million computer systems into landfills amounts to the introduction of 1.2 billion pounds of lead, 2 million pounds of cadmium, and 400,000 pounds of mercury into waste streams. That figure is the actual figure for 2011 in the United States. That many systems were dumped. And here's where those materials come from. This old horse right here, the glass tube itself contains about 4 to 7 pounds of lead. The coating on the screen, on the inside of the screen, contains cadmium. The casing on a computer has flame retardant plastics, which is hazardous when burned. It's flame retardant. It's hard to get started, but once it starts burning, very toxic. I thought I'd inject a little video here because you don't want to just hear me the whole time. Oh, yeah, we got to start it. This actually happens today. Do you not have sound?
I do, but I don't know how to.
I've listened to it so many times I could probably repeat it. This is in Ghana, West Africa. They get a lot of material that is sent to their country as for secondhand sales, even though it's not sold. No sound? Okay. What you're seeing is they're, no, the whole thing's down.
Got it.
Okay. Well, basically what they're doing is heating up cords and other materials to retrieve the precious metals. So they're melting the plastics off the cords. They're melting the solder off of the circuit boards. And when that process is done of them burning the material, what they're doing is sifting through the ash to recover metal. And we're not going to be able to see it, but basically, there's a lot of young people out there standing over these fires, moving material around and breathing the material, or breathing the air that contains all the toxic materials. You want me to just skip? Look,
Yeah.
this will go real fast then. Oh, it's not even letting me move.
It's not letting me.
It's not letting me go to the next slide.
Maybe I can just.
How many people bought a new TV this year? Or how many families? How many plan on getting a new one this year? Okay. Is it because you don't have one or because you're getting another one?
Upgrade.
Is it gonna be a smart TV?
We'll see.
Okay. Oh, this is totally not mine. I think I just looked at the window. I'll just skip ahead. Okay, so continuing why you want to do it. The protection of data is pretty important, especially to the medical facilities, banking industries, schools, even personal use, because it contains a lot of personal data. Your credit card information is on there, your medical information is on there, and I don't know about you, but I prefer mine to be personal. This is referring to the video. In the video, also, Some of the equipment that they're recycling, if you look at the asset tags on there, one of them is from the US EPA. So the very agency that is trying to regulate this process in the US found a recycler that wasn't responsible and the material wound up in Ghana. In the United States, many states have laws that require the manufacturers to accept responsibility for the cost of recycling, because even though there's precious metals in some of the materials, the majority of what's being recycled in terms of volume right now is CRT bearing devices, and the glass no longer has any value, so it's a cost to recyclers to process that material. And I can go into all the economics of it, but I won't. So there's 25 states currently that have legislation that requires recycling of electronics, and that's what I do. I work in those states, and I work with the manufacturers. Also in that video, obviously there's brand names on those components that are being burnt, and Panasonic doesn't want to see their name there. Toshiba doesn't want to see their name there. Samsung doesn't want to see their name there. So that's why we do what we do. So, recycling. There's 56,000 recycling and reuse enterprises in the US that account for 1.1 million workers. That's what George was getting at with the economics of recycling, and it's pretty substantial. And if you see some of the other numbers down the road, it's really astounding. Last year in Wisconsin, 750,000 tons of material went into landfills that could have been recycled. And the estimated revenue from that is $113 million. Our law in Wisconsin for recycling of electronics and computer-related equipment is based on displays, which are televisions, and then computer-related equipment primarily. We'll get more into that down the road, but basically that's what the states are. Some states have a little stricter rules. New York, for example, there's a lot of items that are covered under their law, and businesses are covered, schools are covered. Any electronic waste generated in the state of Illinois is the manufacturer's responsibility to recycle, not Wisconsin. There's 20 states plus the city of New York that have laws that prevent select materials from being landfilled or incinerated. 20 out of 50. 25 states have a law or bill that requires the OEMs to pay for the cost of recycling. Oddly enough, there's more states with laws that require the manufacturers to pay for it than there are banning the landfill of it. Hawaii, did I just say Hawaii? They like today. Well, Hawaii has a law that requires manufacturers to pay for the recycling of electronics, but it's very lean, and they're trying to change that law right now, but they do not have a landfill ban. And I don't know about you, I wouldn't want to be on an island where after a while I'm living on garbage. Sorry. Okay, this is what can be found in cathode ray tubes, lead-bearing PCBs if it was made prior to 1980. So all those TVs in your grandparents' basement, in your parents' basement, that's what's there. Circuit boards have lead, chromium, cadmium, mercury, beryllium, and other heavy and precious metals. Mercury is an interesting one because mercury, when it's landfilled, and we've got a physicist here, right? He can tell you the properties of mercury. It starts to all gas. It's not a solid once it gets above negative 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Till it gets up in the atmosphere, and it's negative 37, falls back to the earth in the water, because most of the earth is covered in water. This is a gentleman I met in Minnesota 2 weeks ago, Jerry Powell. He's the editor of E-Scrap News and Resource Recycling. He does a lot of investigative reporting, and he follows recyclers to make sure that they're managed responsibly. And these numbers, I think, are pretty conservative. Recyclers are starting to stockpile CRTs because they can't be landfilled, and the remanufacture of CRTs is limited. There's only one furnace in the world remaining that makes CRT tubes. They'll probably close within the next year, and there have to be alternative methods of recycling the CRT glass. So what's happening is recyclers, and Ben and I were talking about this earlier, there are smaller recyclers, and they do collect electronics. They don't have an avenue to deal with the CRT glass, so they end up either abandoning the warehouse and going out of business, or stockpiling, or what the video would show you. This is more about it. This particular recycler that he referred to, this is the steps that he went through. He originally sent glass to Samsung Corning, but they closed the furnace. Then he sent it to Mexico, but they stopped handling glass for approximately a year, and they no longer handle glass. So he ended up accumulating it, then sold the glass to two primary lead smelters, Xstrata in New Brunswick, who no longer does it, and Doe Run in Missouri, who is limited in how much they can handle, and they probably are going to stop processing. So it just kept snowballing. So what can we expect in the future? Cell phones are being sold at a rate of 3,188 per minute. How many people in this room have a cell phone? Come on. You started with, yeah, you got one. So everybody in this room has a cell phone? How many people in this room have a smartphone? Okay. How long ago did that technology come out? When was the first iPhone? I know because I had one. But they were the only one at the time. Now everybody's got it. 3,188 per minute sold. 8 out of every 10 Americans have a cell phone. When I grew up, we had one landline, one phone in our house. It hung on the kitchen wall and had a cord about that long. So when you were a teenage boy and you were trying to talk to a girl, forget it. Mom's there. 7.5 million televisions will be purchased just for the purpose of watching the Super Bowl this year. Last year, 5.1 million were sold. The year before that, it was 4.3. Over 4 million tons of steel of selected consumer e-waste will be generated this year. When I say selected e-waste, I told you earlier that we were talking about televisions and computer-related equipment. So that covers printers, keyboards, mice, fax machines, CPUs and laptops. But what about your power tools, stereo equipment, digital converters, cell phones, stereo equipment, because you mentioned the boom boxes earlier, that can still be landfilled. So that 4 million tons is pretty conservative when you consider that it only covers a handful of items. We're trying to prevent e-waste from being dumped. We're trying to conserve energy. That's why we're all here, right? We're trying to create a solution for proper disposal. We're trying to offer a convenient service so that everybody is able to drop their material off so it doesn't sit in their basement like mine. And I work at a place that recycles them, but I still have it. and they still work. To provide a one-stop location to recycle all forms of e-waste. And a lot of recyclers won't do that because the value in most electronics, I shouldn't say that, the value in some electronics can only be extracted through a mechanical process to really get the true value of electronics or the precious metals out of them. Excuse me. And most recyclers don't have that technology. We want to educate the public. That's what we're doing right now, right? By the way, this is a very nice form. To protect personal data, the video also mentioned the Basel Action Network, and they are responsible for the third-party auditing for the eStewards certification. Most banking industries, some municipalities, some regulatory agencies require electronics recyclers to have this certification, but not all of them. The EPA does not. That's why they have material in common. So, how can we improve? What do we need to do to improve? I can't do it for everybody, but you can do it for yourself. And hopefully, I wish we could have seen the video, but hopefully we're all educated enough to know that there's substantial energy savings in recycling of anything, not just electronics, but of anything. Electronics is substantial because of the mining process, the precious metals that are required, and the energy that is consumed to mine those materials is far beyond what it costs to recycle that material. So, any questions?
For that video, is there somewhere we'd be able to find it so we can watch it later?
It is on YouTube. It's a YouTube video that says if you go to e-waste in Ghana, it's on there. It's about 6.5 minutes long. Anybody else? The guy behind you first.
A couple questions. So what steps can be taken today with current technologies for electronics to ease the recycling process? So, Snap-on electric compost stuff. And then what do you see happening in the future? So flexible electronics and computer technologies, how will that change?
I see the laws becoming stricter down the road because just what I said about what selected materials are covered and which ones aren't. Those laws in most states are based upon the sales of the electronics manufacturers. Excuse me. Like Panasonic, for example, what they're required as an allocation in the state is typically based on the weights of material that they sold 2 years ago. Well, we all know that electronics keep getting lighter and lighter, so they're producing more units at less weight. And what we're seeing as recyclers is still material that's 20 and 30 years old. So their requirement for paying for that recycling is decreasing, but the demand for it is not. I also see that will change because, less than 12.5% of all e-waste is recycled in this country. And that's not even including non-covered items. So it's probably more like 7. Okay.
So only 12% is being recycled. Do you see potential for new entrepreneurs coming up with so much to recycle and a decent amount of money to make, or?
Everybody's a recycler. I see stuff coming every day that people have tried to pick material apart and then send the rest, the they try to retrieve what's of value in it and then pass everything else on. The legislation doesn't address that either, because basically what is being generated is waste. It's not, I shouldn't say it's not recyclable, but it's not economically beneficial for recyclers to do it. So, does that make sense? Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. There's gonna be more and more all the time. Once we get to the point where, especially since technology is advancing so fast and increasing so much, and you can go to Walmart and buy a 32-inch TV on Black Friday for $98. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Ben?
Do you recycle PCB ballasts?
We handle them, but we do not recycle them. We manage that waste, but we don't actually recycle it ourselves.
What are the end products that you produce? You separate the metals, and how do you get these finely, widely distributed, whereas how are they electronics?
What's recovered?
Yeah.
Plastics, aluminum, ferrous metal, steel, copper, and we go through mechanical processes and manual processes, and we work directly with smelters, and smelters, not the guys pushing the thing over the fire, but true smelters. They are able to separate the precious metals and retrieve the value from them. There's a handful of them in the world, there's about 6 that focus on just that. Go ahead.
Based on what you're showing there on the CRTs, is it best if I just keep my CRT in the basement, or should I?
No, it's best that you manage it. If you're not gonna use it, it is best that you take it in. We all have that habit. I told you, I have it myself. I have 2 of them in my basement, and I can't bring myself to take it to where I work because it works. But I will.
Okay, I'll be able to do something with it.
Yeah, there are most locations in the Midwest, the ones that we manage anyways, are free of charge. I don't know about the city of Madison. We work with the city, but I don't know if they have a charge or not. We do not.
So how challenging it was when e-waste started, like to encourage people to recycle?
Are you talking about the law?
Yeah, like making people actually bring it to the pickup places instead of just storing the
The
basement.
thing that really started people, get them to recycle, was when the landfill bans were implemented. If you can't put it at your curb, and I still see them, I drive down the road, I was driving here today and I saw along the curb a pile of stuff people had up their curb, and there was a TV sitting there, because they think it's gonna be taken away. Until people understand that you can't put it in the garbage. That was the challenge initially. It still is a challenge in a lot of places. Like I said, 30 of the states don't even have that. So it's been difficult, but the recycling rate increases every year. And it's based on only that handful of materials. Ultimately, I think more materials will be included in those laws and it'll improve.
You recycle dehumidifiers?
We do.
Do you have a charge for that?
No.
So also, U.S. is one of the pioneers in e-waste recycling. What do you think? Will it be easier for other countries to start this?
Europe has been a lot more advanced than the U.S. has. Europe actually started this process long before we did, and they are a lot stricter on their requirements. Their recycling rates are about 60%, and ours are about 12.5%. Anybody else? Okay.